Hello, it's online lecture again. Today we will talk about metabolism and enzyme and energy. So, what is energy? The definition of energy is here. It's the ability to do work or bring about change. It is different from force. Force, F equal to ma. Force is basically when a mass is accelerating, meaning that it is a mass is moving with an increasing speed or decreasing speed, then it is force. But energy is different. Its ability to do work or bring about change, and there are different types of energy that we will talk about today, like kinetic energy, potential energy. All living cell and living organism need a constant supply of energy. If we do not have energy, then what does it mean? It means that we are dead. Why do we need energy? Energy requires growth, metabolism, and reproduction. And basically, everything we do in our body, it requires energy. What is the ultimate source of energy? Do you know? The ultimate source of energy is the sun. So we call this a solar energy. Why? Because photosynthesis provides nutrients for the almost all the life on the earth. But photosynthesis requires what? Photosynthesis requires sunlight. That's why the sun is the ultimate source of energy for everything. And then photosynthesis, the plants, they take the solar energy to make glucose and also to make oxygen. In this case, they can supply food for almost all the animals on the earth. Forms of energy. I briefly mentioned that we have something called kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. And it gives you an example. It's like it's a ball rolling down a hill. And the potential energy is like stored energy. An example is food. Food has stored energy. But another example of potential energy is that if you put let's say it is a ball again. If a ball is on top of a hill, then it has a potential energy of gravity, of height. Why? Because when it rolls down the hill, basically the ball is converting the potential energy of height or of gravity into kinetic energy. Food stored energy. The energy the food stored is actually a form of chemical energy. Why? Because in food we talk about the four major types of macromolecules, namely carbohydrate, protein, lipid, and nucleic acid. Food, for example, they may have a lot of carbohydrate, and carbohydrate like starch, and you know that starch is like a connection, multiple glucose connect together as a long chain, and then all the covalent bond in glucose and also in between each glucose, they store energy. By breaking the covalent bond within the glucose molecule or in between the glucose molecule, we can release energy. That's why we call it chemical energy. Chemical energy is actually a form of potential energy stored. Mechanical energy is an energy of motion. Then you may ask, how does it different from the kinetic energy? Actually, mechanical energy is also a form of kinetic energy. So kinetic energy is like a big umbrella term. Underneath it, we have mechanical energy. Similarly, Potential energy is like a big umbrella term. Underneath it, we have chemical energy. This picture is just telling you that the conversion of energy from one source into another. The ultimate source of energy on the Earth is the sun, the solar energy. It gives the heat to our Earth, and also the plant can harvest the solar energy and then use it to do photosynthesis. During the photosynthesis, it will generate heat again, and then the photosynthesis will make chemical energy. What is the chemical energy made by photosynthesis? Do you know? It is the product like the glucose. Glucose is a form of chemical energy that stored the energy in covalent bond. And then as animals eat the plant, then they will harvest the glucose or the chemical energy stored in glucose, and then the animal will convert this chemical energy into mechanical energy for it to move around or for other activities. When we start with the energy, we need to talk about two laws of thermodynamics. For those of you who have taken chemistry or physics, it will be a good review for you. For those who have not, it's okay. We will only talk about the two laws of thermodynamics. The first one is called a law of conservation of energy, meaning that energy cannot be created or destroyed. The only thing we can do with energy is that we can make it change from one form to another. Just like what we showed you in the previous picture, we can change solar energy into chemical energy and heat, and then chemical energy, we can change it into mechanical energy and in heat and also heat. So I'll talk about the relationship between heat and the different energy. How come we always have heat? So energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to the another. Meaning that, okay, from solar energy to mechanical energy, or from solar energy to chemical energy. This is what we call law of conservation of energy. Another one is that energy cannot be changed from one form to another without the loss of energy. In other words, the change of energy or the conversion of energy from one form to another is not 100% efficient. There is always some loss. What will be the loss of energy? Take a guess. Yes, it is the heat. The heat that is being lost in the process of conversion is the one that contributes to the inefficiency of the conversion. We give you an example of the leaves of the cell. In here, the sun provides solar energy, and then the leaf, which organelle capture the solar energy in leaf. Do you still remember our online lecture, the cell structures and functions? So the organelle that captured solar energy is called chloroplast. Chloroplast captures sun, and then it takes in water to split the it takes in water to split what's that? Split the molecules, and then eventually it will make glucose, and then it will produce heat in the process. So the cell use but not create solar energy to form carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is glucose at the end product. Some energy is lost as heat, but no energy is destroyed. And then we will talk about cellular respiration in the next lecture on Wednesday. And the energy we take in carbohydrate it's like glucose, and then converted into something called ATP. ATP is the energy molecule we use in our body, and we talk about ATP in our Wednesday lecture as the third example of nucleic acid. Some energy is lost as heat and it is not destroyed. So the energy we produce, the ATP we produce from eating glucose, will be used for, let's say, muscle contraction. So what happened to the heat that we release from the photosynthesis, let's say? From photosynthesis, it will dissipate to the environment. What about cellular respiration in our body? Of course, the cellular respiration in our body, the heat that generate will go to the environment as well, but actually, most of the heat that generate from the cellular respiration will be used for maintaining our body temperature at 37 degrees Celsius. Heat energy is not useful, it is not available to do work. Well, yeah, I would say this is a general statement. At the end of the lecture, we'll talk about enzyme. Then you will know that why we use the heat that is released from the cellular respiration to keep our body at 37 degrees Celsius. And heat energy in general is not useful, but for a lot of enzymatic reactions, those reactions require the body to be in a constant, stable temperature in order for them to carry out. Heat that is lost in the environment cannot be recaptured. Yeah, it's like it is wasted in the environment, but actually the environment absorbs those heat and then convert it into different forms of energy. And this is what I just told you, the second law of thermodynamics. That means that the conversion is not 100% efficient. Nothing is perfect in this world. But the second law of thermodynamics can be called the entropy. It has a lot to do with entropy. What is entropy? Entropy means a disorganization. In other words, our universe, the world, the entire world, the universe, is getting more and more messy. Yes, it's more and more disorganized, more and more messy. Why? Because if it is order, that means if it is tidy and ordered, then it requires energy to maintain the order. But if it is messy and disorganized, then it has less energy. When it has less energy in a messy and disorganized, then what will happen? It requires less energy to maintain. That explains why, maybe some of you, or at least your professor's place, is very messy, because it requires less energy from me to maintain a tidy, nice place to live. And the process used for cell energy transformation, we already talked about it repeatedly. Our cell convert or transform chemical energy from glucose into ATP. So every process, whatever chemical reaction, it increases the entropy of the universe. That means our universe is getting messier and messier. And then cellular process require the input energy from the outside source, for example, transport. The reason why we need to have a cellular respiration to make ATP, because our body needs ATP to do this, biosynthesis, transportation of molecule inside or outside of the cell. And then the last thing, it means that the sun is the ultimate source of energy, because where do we take the glucose? Where do we get the glucose from? In order to make ATP, glucose is from food. What do we eat? We eat plants, we eat animal. Plant, of course, they get the energy from the sun, but animal, where do they get the energy from? Animal, they either eat another animal, but many animals, they eat something called herbivore. That means like cow. And when we eat the steak, that means that we eat cow, and cow eat grass. Grass is like the plant. So in other words, we all depends on the energy of the sun, either directly or indirectly. This is an example of entropy. This is a glucose molecule. I showed you that this is a space field model. I believe it is in the first online lecture. So glucose here is that it is more organized, more potential energy, and less stable. That means it is, the reason is that it has more potential energy because it has a lot of covalent bond. It is less stable because it has all the covalent bond that stores all the energy. So glucose is a high energy molecule that makes it very stable. Another example of high energy molecule will be dynamite, or atomic bomb. Those are extremely high energy molecules. That makes them less stable, extremely unstable. So glucose is a high energy molecule, but of course it is not as high energy as I told you, atomic bomb or dynamite. And then, so after glucose is being broken down into carbon dioxide and water by the process of cellular respiration, then it will be less organized, less potential energy, and more stable. More stable because it has less covalent bond in each of these smaller molecules. That means each smaller molecule, they contains less energy. When they have less energy, they are more stable. And the glucose, when we use it, when we undergo cellular respiration to make ATP, where do we use the ATP? How do we use the ATP? Some of the ATP that is generated from glucose can be used for letting us to, move like this. That's why we call it kinetic energy. So the energy stored in glucose will be converted into the kinetic energy, and then the end product will be carbon dioxide and water, and they are more stable. Another example will be the membrane protein. Remember we talked about membrane protein in the last online lecture, the membrane structures and function. One of the membrane protein we talk about is the channel protein. We talk about that. The purpose of channel protein is to transport the charged ion or charged molecule to transport it in between the inside and the outside of the cell membrane. In here, the example is like this. Inside of the cell, in the cytoplasm, we have a lot of hydrogen ion. And then outside of the cell, we don't have a lot of hydrogen ion. And because of that, there's a natural tendency for the hydrogen ion inside of the cell to want to go outside of the cell. But because it is a phospholipid bilayer, the charged ion cannot go through the hydrophobic fatty acid chain here. Because of that, it requires a channel protein to help to transport the charged hydrogen ion to go outside. And this process does not require any energy. Why? And can you name this process? The process of hydrogen ion going from a high concentration area to a low concentration area through a channel protein. What is the process of this transportation? What is the name of this transportation process? Let me give you a tips. It is not diffusion. The answer is you can call it a facilitated diffusion or facilitated transport. We call it facilitated because it requires a protein to help the process. We call it a diffusion, or facilitate diffusion. We call it diffusion because it is a movement of molecule from a high concentration area to a low concentration area. And most importantly, it does not require ATP energy. So that's a brief review of what we learned previously. And then here we can see that it's a similar situation. In this case, it is more organized, more potential energy, less stable. More organized because we can see that, okay, we have no hydrogen ion here, we have lots of hydrogen ion here. And in here, both sides has a hydrogen ion, so it makes it less organized because the hydrogen ion is all over the place, and then therefore it is more stable and less potential energy. Last, this is an example I told you about your professor's place. This is when his mom is here. When my mom visits my place, it will look like this. When my mom is not here, after a few weeks, then my place looks like this. So as you can see, that the reason is that it takes a lot less energy to maintain a messy bedroom, but it takes a lot more energy to maintain a tidy bedroom. Many of you who have children will totally understand what I just talked about. It takes a lot of energy to help your children to clean up their rooms. Now we talk about metabolism. Metabolism, it is the definition here. It's the sum of all chemical reactions that occur in the cell. Metabolism is basically there are two types of metabolism. One is called catabolism, one is called anabolism. Catabolism means it's a breaking down of molecules. Anabolism means building up molecules. Or in a more global or in a bigger picture, you can call it catabolism is breaking down your, or it can be a generating energy. You can call it is generating energy. For anabolism, you can call it is like a growth or reproduction, growth or reproduction. So how do we memorize that metabolism? There are two types. How do you memorize that catabolism? It's like breaking down or generating energy. Or anabolism is like growth or building molecules. So Professor Fink from our own West LA College, he has a very good analogy. He said that, oh, cat, what does cat do in your home when you are not there? Cat, when you are not in your home and you have a cat, what will happen? Cat will destroy everything in your place. Because of that, catabolism, breaks down all the molecules. So then you can memorize the catabolism. Okay, break down molecules. The cat destroy everything, and then the opposite anabolism will be building molecules. So energy transformation. We have to define reactant and product. So in the reaction, A plus B becomes C plus D. So reactant are the substance that participate in the reaction, but the product is the substance that form the result of the reaction. You can just assume that reactants are the beginning or starting of a reaction. Product is like the end of a reaction. But well, in a normal biological or living tissue in a cell, it's not that simple. It's not just a one-step process. It's not as simple. Most of the reaction is not just one-step process. It is actually a chain of reaction. In other words, the product C and D will become the reactant of the next reaction. So you will see that later. I will give you an example of that. Free energy, delta G, is the amount of energy available. So what is free energy? free energy can be zero, can be larger than zero or less than zero. This is the definition of free energy, is the differences of the product and reactant. So if you put it as an equation, so it will be delta G, the free energy, is the free energy of product minus free energy of the reactant. So after you put the value in, after you plug in the value here, then if it is zero, that means there is no reaction basically. If there's a larger than zero or less than zero, then you will have reaction. Then we will talk about the differences between larger than zero or less than zero right now. We have exogonic reaction. Exogonic reaction are the one the energy is released. Exogonic when delta G is negative, meaning that I should put it here. So exogonic reaction when energy is released, that means exogonic reaction is hot. Here, the required input of the energy, that means the reaction is cold. So this is what I want to add to the slides. So it's the one that energy is negative. When it is delta G is negative, that means it will release energy. When it releases energy, let's say if you hold a test tube. If you hold a test tube, if it is an exogonic reaction, the test tube will be warm to touch. That's why it is releasing energy. And if the test tube is an endogonic reaction, that means it will require input of the energy. That means the test tube will absorb energy from the surrounding. Then when you hold it, you will feel cold because it is absorbing the heat energy from your hand. So product has less free energy than reactant. It is spontaneous. So if you take a look at this equation, if it is negative, that means the G of product should be less than G of reactant. So exogonic. And therefore, endogonic. So exogonic reaction, in general, they're spontaneous, while endogonic reaction is not. Why? The reason is that exogonic reaction, in the exogonic reaction, if the reactant has more energy than the product, then due to the law of entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, the reactant will have a tendency to lose energy, to become less organized, to become more stable. By losing the extra energy in here, then it will form a lower energy product because it follows the second law of thermodynamics. The reaction will be spontaneous. However, the endogonic reaction is not spontaneous because the product has more energy than the reactant. meaning that we need to supply energy to the reactant to make this product. You can assume that exergonic energy is like, okay, my mom visited me, and then she cleaned up the room, and then after this, I messed up the room. So me messing up the room does not require that much energy, so it will occur spontaneously. It will occur naturally by itself. On the other hand, if I want to clean up a messy room into a tidy room, what do I need to do? I need to spend a lot of time and energy to do it. So in this case, the product will be that means at the beginning the room is very messy, but if I want to make the room tidy, then I need to spend a lot of time and effort to clean up the room. That's why the product will require energy. If the messy room I don't do anything, then will the room spontaneously or naturally become tidy up? No, it won't. This is what it means. So when you study the energy, think about a tidy room and a messy room, then it will give you a better understanding. ATP. We talk about ATP on Wednesday. So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. I hope you still remember. And then it is the energy we use for the living cells. Okay, remember, ATP is the energy for living cells, both the animal cells and plant cells. Remember that? ATP derived from ADP, adenosine diphosphate, suggesting that ADP has only 2 phosphate groups, but ATP has 3 phosphate groups. Okay, don't mix up. And then the inorganic phosphate molecule, this is this one. If it forms a covalent bond with ADP, then it will become ATP. So the last sentence is basically our next lecture on Wednesday. Glucose will break down, and then breaking down of glucose, that means breaking down of the covalent bond within the glucose molecule will release enough energy for us to make ATP. In other words, it is also it means that it is the first law of thermodynamics, meaning that we convert the chemical energy stored in the covalent bond of glucose, and then we convert it into ATP. So this is how it looks like, the cycling between ATP and ADP. ATP, remember, it is the third example of nucleic acid. It has the adenine here, which is a nitrogenous base. We have a pentose, a sugar that has a 5-carbon sugar here. And then we have 3 phosphate group. And then the exergonic reaction, that means it requires hydrolysis. Remember hydrolysis, it needs water to break down ATP. Remember that? When we break this bond, then it will release the energy of this covalent bond here. And the energy release, we can use the energy release to, let's say, move our body, contraction of muscle. And then here, we will have the ADP and inorganic phosphate group. Here's lower energy. And then we will go through the endergonic reaction, creating ATP we have to supply energy to form this bond, this covalent bond here, between the inorganic phosphate group and the ADP molecule. After we supply energy, then the endergonic reaction will occur to form this ATP. So ATP is a higher energy molecule, ADP is a low energy molecule. Structure of ATP, well, is a review of last Wednesday's lecture. I already briefly mentioned. We have an adenine, which is a nitrogenous base. Ribose is a 5-carbon sugars, or we call it pentose. Pentose. if you see the word OSE, it is usually a sugar. Hence means 5, because it is 5 carbon, it has 5 carbon. In other words, it is a 5 carbon sugar. And then it has 3 phosphate group, energy stored in the we call it covalent bond in between the phosphate group. Function, okay, ATP, basically we use ATP for everything in our body. Chemical work, well, anabolism. Remember, anabolism is to building up molecules. We use ATP as for the energy to make new molecules in our body. Transport. Remember, we have the pump. We use the pump. We use ATP for active transport. For mechanical work, we use ATP to make for muscles to contract. We will talk about muscle contraction later in this lecture. And the movement of the cilia and flagella is also require ATP. That's why in sperm, the beating of the sperm tail requires ATP, and the ATP in the sperm is located at the neck of the sperm. And then we have something called coupled reactions. For the exothermic reaction, so we